I'm 23. I've known I was adopted all along. For whatever reason, I became obsessed with learning more about my birth parents at age 13. I was told all my life that my parents met both of my birth parents before I was officially adopted. My mom was white from South America and my dad was white from Italy. They specified these two locations to explain why I had tan skin. As I was growing up, certain things about my physical makeup made me more curious about my birth parents. My hair was kept short as a kid, but as a teen I wanted to experiment. I grew it out and it grew out curly. Big curls, but still curly. This upset my parents, so they asked that I not grow it out. When I moved away for college, I began to let it grow again. I met my girlfriend in school. She is Black American, so she also helped me care for it. She once braided my hair before I FaceTimed my parents, who lost it on me for wearing it that way. Throughout my time in school, I still searched for my birth mom, but would always come up empty. My girlfriend hinted that there must have been a mistake with the information, even down to the name my parents claimed I had before they adopted me. She gifted me a DNA kit on my birthday that I didn't get around to until the lockdown hit. I didn't think anything would come of it because my parents weren't American, so I didn't know if it would work that way. So I sent it out of boredom and got my results weeks later, which have changed everything. I'm Black and Middle Eastern. I have light skin and my curl pattern is so loose that I hadn't considered it a sign before. I have ancestral ties to Iran, which can explain a more European facial structure. I'm sorry for my wording, I'm still learning. I sent my GF a screenshot and she called me right away. We were both stunned, though she long suspected. I tried to believe that my parents were innocently misinformed, but my girlfriend kept pointing out the inconsistencies. My parents claimed to have met my birth parents, therefore they couldn't have mistaken them for white. I confronted my parents, who became enraged at me for doing a DNA kit. I was very angry, yelling, swearing. They robbed me of my identity and hindered my search with their lies. My mom told me through tears that my racial background comes with a stigma that I'd passed, so she wanted me to have an easier life fitting in. My dad yelled at me that I had to abandon what I just learned. I rage broke my phone and left. My siblings have been hitting me up on social media, reprimanding me for being upset because our parents' reasoning is sound. I do pass, I did have an easy life. I'm not asking to be part of a struggle all of a sudden. I just don't think I should have been lied to, and I think their reasoning is bullshit and racist. I'm just supposed to act like 10 years of me searching with the wrong info isn't that big of a deal? My parents admit that my mom was Black. My oldest sister also recalls seeing my mom at some point. Both verify that she was Black. Yes, they could be lying again. I have plans to continue to look into my background. My girlfriend was very hurt by their statements, so I chose to keep us both away from them. I don't understand how. I'm angry about being lied to and how that lie has made my effort into finding my birth parents completely void, while also rewriting my heritage. That's my girlfriend's stance as well. I'm tan enough that going to an all-white school still got me called slurs. Whatever issues my parents were trying to shield me from, it didn't work. Maybe this is a lie that I bought into alone. 2 of my siblings are trying to be supportive. I deactivated my Facebook and unfollowed some people on Instagram. I can't entertain the argument that I should forgive my parents and move on. I'm not there yet. I get that it makes me ungrateful for feeling this way. I don't hate them, I'm just really upset and disappointed in their decisions. About a week after my post, I planted a wall of blackberries and raspberries at the 2 sides of my garden facing the driveway, about 30 centimeters from the edge, so no overhanging branches. On the other side of the berry wall, I planted lots stuff like strawberries and tomatoes. To reach the tomatoes and strawberries from the driveway, you have either go through the fruit bushes or walk up to my house. Walk about 2 m along the side of the house and my windows, and then walk into my actual garden. Not something you do by mistake. For about 2 weeks it was somewhat quiet, but I still found the kids on my driveway every single days. As far as I know, they did not enter the garden, and I hadn't noticed them walking around my house anymore. So I figured the bushes were working. About 1 week ago, berry season started and my bushes are now full of raspberries, and there's lots of strawberries as well. The neighbors noticed. First I caught the boys picking and eating raspberries, so I told them off and dropped them off at home, told their mom I caught them stealing. That's how I see it, even though it's fruit, and that I'd call the cops next time. She huffed and told me to grow up, but took the boys inside anyway. After that it was quiet up until yesterday afternoon, when I went out for a while and found the dad and his 2 sons right in the middle of my garden when I returned, clearing my bushes and plants. I didn't even confront them, just called the cops from a distance as they hadn't noticed me yet and started filming them after making the call. Luckily 2 cops showed up after 10 minutes or so and they confronted the neighbor as they were still picking berries. They told them they were trespassing and that the berry picking was in fact considered stealing and that I could press charges. For the first time I noticed a bit of fear in my neighbor. He was having trouble finding his words and kept looking back at his house, I guess hoping his wife would show to yell at the cops. They all went inside with the cops, so I just went home as well. After a while the cops came by and asked me if I wanted to press charges. I asked them if they felt like they scared the neighbor enough to stay away. I got a small smile and yes, about him, but the wife had just kept shouting at them and her husband about the little. Living next door. I told them no for now, asked them if I'd be allowed to get an extra camera set up on the wall between my garden and the road, to cover the entire front garden plus driveway. They said that's allowed as long as it's on my side of the wall. So, now I'm getting an extra camera installed. One neighbor knows I'm done messing around but his wife isn't there yet, and if I ever catch any of them again, the cops will be called and possible charges will follow. My boyfriend of almost 3 years told me a series of white lies that to me seem more serious. Can't tell if I'm overreacting or if this is actually indicative of a bigger problem. My boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 3 years, living together for 2. We have a pretty good relationship, obviously with ups and downs, but we make it work and are happy. A little background on me and my boyfriend. I come from a single-parent home. My father was absent. My mother was and is by no means perfect, but she did her best with what she had. We were poor. Life was never easy for us, but we had each other. Since I was pretty young, I've wanted to pay her back someday. I've worked incredibly hard to be able to do so. I help her financially as much as I can and regularly pay her bills / send her cash. I'm also her only living child now as my brother passed away 5 years ago, which basically left me to help her. I don't care. I love my mother, and the right thing to do is to help her when she needs it. But is stressful. This is relevant because my boyfriend described coming from a somewhat similar past, and it is something we have bonded over. Having the mutual experiences seemed to bring us closer. He told me he also helped his parents financially, and we would often vent to each other about the stress it brings. I am not one to confide in many people, so having someone who I felt like actually understood me was meaningful to me. So here is where the lies come in, and I need someone to either tell me I'm not crazy and this is horror, or that I am crazy and this isn't a huge deal. I'm fine with either. When we met, my boyfriend lived in a condo in a pretty swanky part of the city. I live in the US Northeast. He told me he owned that apartment / condo. I found this to be interesting / odd because he was 28 at the time, and I know this property is upwards of $650,000 on the low end, and he was in an entry-level job for only like 2 years, so the numbers just didn't really add up. Whatever, maybe he's good at saving. But then, since living together, I never once saw a piece of mail for a mortgage payment, electric bill, taxes, nothing. Not for 2 whole years. Very odd. Also, when we started living together, he didn't have his room rented out in the former apartment yet, so he was still responsible for that portion of the rent. He would send a Venmo payment to his mother on the 1st of every month for his portion. I don't own property, but I can't think of a scenario where I would Venmo my mother to pay the mortgage on a property I supposedly own. Getting more odd. He would then go to his parents' house for an afternoon and come back really upset. Usually when I would ask why, it was because they were having financial problems and he needed to help them out. I totally understood this and supported him. He literally has cried on my shoulder about this many times. He tried to start a company years back and ended up getting into debt somehow. He told me this debt was $17,000 and that he paid it off. I'm confused because I met him only 2 to 3 years after the supposed debt accrued / company dissolved, and it was already paid off. He told me when he moved back home after the business failed. He was $17,000 in debt and living at his parents' house working at a minimum wage job. How someone with a minimum wage job pays off that much debt in 3 years, I'll never know. We got into a fight a few weeks ago and I finally had enough and confronted him about these things. He doesn't help his parents, they actually pay his phone bill, and this was all a lie. He doesn't own that apartment, he didn't pay off that debt from his company. He initially told me his parents helped pay it off and then like 3 minutes later, came clean. And said that his business partner paid it off, so I have literally no idea what the truth is there, and if anything, in my eyes. His parents are the ones who are financially supporting him. So now, I'm dating a 31 years old man who doesn't pay his own phone bill, was lying to me and / or completely fabricating aspects of his life for 3 years. And then when confronted about it, continued to make up lies and then came clean about them 5 minutes later. I'm obviously concerned that he could lie for this long, about fundamentally important things like our values, and so on. I sincerely thought I would marry this man, he seemed to understand me like no one else and to be a truly caring and genuine person. Now I'm having a hard time rationalizing actually planning a life around someone who would not only lie about their background and family etc. but also financial aspects. Aside from that, I now can't tell what is the truth and what is a lie. I've also noticed other things he has lied about, called him out on it, and he has denied it outright to my face. I see this as a form of gaslighting, as I know I'm not wrong, but he is trying to convince me otherwise. Am I overreacting? Is this a white lie that went haywire? Or is this actually a series of complete and utter bullshit used to manipulate me? And also, is it insane for me to actually consider a life with this man? I have a friend from high school who has a teenage daughter that recently started having fainting spells. I remembered that my nephew had this issue as a child and texted in Messenger to ask my older sister about what they found out about him and if it sounded like my friend's daughter. I asked via text because she is pretty busy. She answered that he still has it and it's a condition he has with anxiety and it overwhelms his heart sometimes. An hour or so later she started talking, again, via text, about how her son and daughter, both young adults now, are mentally handicapped and have psychotic episodes. Saying that the daughter totally made up the flea issue they had in their house and her mental issues caused her to break out in hives. This made me confused as I've been with her kids and even took my niece on vacation with us so she could ride the slides with my husband. Not my thing anymore, and she was perfectly fine. Well, an hour later my sister texted me saying all of that was not her. After she had told me about her son's anxiety issue, she had went to work and her husband. Yes, her husband had pretended to be her and even Googled all this BS up. I already had issues with her husband. He has lied and has had other issues before. To say I was angry is an understatement. Her husband, who is not her children's father, was bad-mouthing and telling me her kids are mentally unstable. Carl already has a past of being like this to her kids and my sister went along with it. I told her, that was it. I'm done. I went no contact for the past month, although I kept in touch with the kids. She has a younger son, age 15. And he does not get along with her husband, either. I told the elder too what he had said so they had a heads up. My sister defended him initially but apologized 2 days ago. I told her that her husband needs to apologize for himself, though. He is a grown man. Until then my kids and husband will not be attending anything outside of holidays at my mom's house, their neighbors. My mom can visit or I can visit her, but my kids will have nothing to do with her husband. Even after the apology, he will not be family to me or mine. He is deeply homophobic, drunk every time we visit, and racist. He is the reason my sister is not someone I want to raising my kids if something happened to us. My mom told me I should let it go, because family, but my husband backs me 100%. He claims he thought I knew it was him because they share a FB account. He was looking at other women's accounts and talking to them. So my sister insisted they share an account so he would not do that. Even if it were him not pretending to be my sister. He was spreading lies about 2 people I care for deeply.